Chapter 3, History of Zoroastrianism. As we have seen, Zoroastrianism, or the good religion, sprang from the roots of the common Indo-European traditional cult, of which Zarathustra was a priest. The religion was born suddenly in the revelatory vision of one man. The systematic reformation of the old cult formed the new religion. From that point forward, the ancients called their faith Mazda Yazda, literally wisdom worship, or Bedin, the good religion, or more literally, the good insight. Zarathustra called it Dana Vanai, good conscience. The religion is only called Zoroastrianism by outsiders, or when followers of the good religion want to make their identity clear to others. This religion has had a continuous and dramatic history since its founding. It became the single most influential religious philosophy known to man, and yet has in recent years slipped into virtual obscurity. This short history of the good religion should make the reasons for all of this clear. Clarity should also be gained as to why it is necessary for us to renew the strength of the good religion here in the West. Zoroastrianism and its literature. We know that Zarathustra was a priest of the Iranian cult. He trained in the oral recital of verses to be performed during the sacrificial rituals. We know this because the verses he composed for his new vision were in the style of this kind of poetry. His own verses, called the Gathas, survive in only fragmentary form, and they are embedded in the larger body of work called the Avesta. The original vision of Zarathustra reflected in the Gathas, ca. 1700 BCE, shows that the prophet wanted to eliminate the worship of other gods and goddesses and focus exclusively on Ahura Mazda. Other divinities were either relegated to the demonic status or were seen as abstract extensions of Ahura Mazda. Zarathustra had some success in his lifetime, converting kings and others to the faith, and in establishing a priesthood for his new religion, carry it forth into history. Other material was composed at a later date. We know this because the language is of a later kind, although still basically the same as that used by Zarathustra. The language is called Avestan, after the text in which it is found. This later material was composed between 1000 and 500 BCE, and the later material, old gods such as Mitra, re-emerged as Yazatas, those worthy of worship. For a full 1,000 years, Zoroastrianism developed in Iran and beyond its borders as a universal faith of conscience. It entered various royal courts and migrated to the western part of Iran among the Medes and Pars, but it was not the official state religion. In the West, a priest in this religion was known as a magu. From this title, our words magic and magus are derived. Other cults based on the older tradition existed in Iran alongside the new religion. In other words, the old gods and goddesses of Iran continued to be worshipped in many places, and there was continuous cross-fertilization between the old system and the new. The situation went on for approximately 1,000 years, during which time the canon of religious verbal records was established and continued to be passed on orally within the priesthood. From 614 to 334 BCE, Iran was formed into the world's first great empire, first in the west under the Medes and under Cyrus Koresh the Great and his successors. That Zoroastrianism was the religion of the emperors is revealed in many old Persian inscriptions, an example of which is Vashnarya Mazda Adam Soiteo Amia. By the greatness of Ahura Mazda, I am king. During the time of this empire building, Zoroastrian texts continued to be orally composed, memorized, and transmitted. Fire temples began to be built, and even some subsects of the religion began to form. But it cannot be said that Zoroastrianism was the official state religion in the sense that everyone had to convert to it in order to live in empire. Far from it. The Achaemenian Empire was a wondrous patchwork of nationalities and religions, all working in harmony, each maintaining their own individualities. In 334, disaster struck when the Macedonian Alexander the Great conquered the Achaemenid Empire and in the barbarous fashion laid waste to significant amounts of Iranian culture and its resources. Secular and religious priests were killed and temples sacked. Alexander died shortly thereafter. The Greeks created a Hellenized system of religion which brought together Hellenic and Iranian elements. In 312 BCE, the Seleucid Empire was established, which was Hellenistic in character. Under the Greek influence of Zoroastrians began to develop a script to write down the remnants of the religious material. Zoroastrians had to retreat to the mountainous areas to survive the process of Hellenization. When the Seleucids were overthrown by the Parthians, there was a slow renewal of the Zoroastrian infrastructure, and the texts were increasingly written down. The full canon of 21 sections of Gnostic Zoroastrian holy books was written down and established in the time of the succeeding Sasanian Empire. After 224 CE, it was only around this time that Zoroastrianism became the official state religion of the empire. Led by the high priest Tansar and his successor Qadir, the Avestan alphabet was fully developed and the texts were committed to writing. The language of the people was by the time Middle Persian or Pahlavi. Older texts were translated into this language and original works were composed in it. The clerical leaders attempted to drive out other religions and to enforce an orthodox standard against which heretics would be measured. This trend is obviously not in the true spirit of Zarathustra. For almost 2,000 years, the good religion had flourished without Kerosene. The Sasanian Empire was a golden age of Persian culture, but one which contained the seeds of its own destruction. In 636 through 651, disaster struck again, and when the invading Arabs conquered the Sasanian Empire, bringing the new religion of Islam with them, in the initial onslaught, many of the Arabs' conquerors destroyed Zoroastrian properties and slaughtered thousands of priests, just as Alexander had done. But this time, the Persians were able to have almost immediate and decisive impact on the new intellectual order, in contrast to what the Greeks were able to do to them 800 years earlier. The Zoroastrianism continued to be practiced and held many of the people together. Arabic replaced Pahlavi as the language of the state around 700 CE, but at the same time, Pahlavi religious texts continued to be written and recorded right up to the 8th century. Some Pahlavi texts were also even translated into Arabic. Islam continued to spread in Iran due to the methods of conversion used by Muslims. In 750, an Abbasid Caliphate was established, ruling Iran from the capital of Baghdad, a Persian word meaning gift of God. Around 900 CE, persecution of non-Muslims intensified. A group of Zoroastrians gathered in Khorasan and set out to immigrate to India. It took them many years of hardship to make the journey. They finally arrived on the Indian coast in 936. There they settled along the coast north of Bombay and Mumbai. Generally, the Parsis, which the Zoroastrians in India came to be called, prospered in India. Only episodes when Muslims actually came to power in the province of Gujarat did they have hardships. The Parsis could not engage in attempts to convert the local population as a condition of peaceful relations with them. Back in Iran, periods of persecution alternated with times of relative tolerance for the next few centuries. Religious knowledge and zeal waned among the Parsis over the centuries, and those in Iran became more and more isolated. Nevertheless, the Iranian priesthood sent letters of instruction, Riviyats, to the brethren living in India. The Parsis in India got a stroke of good luck when the British acquired Bombay as their commercial hub in 1661. Parsis moved there in droves and prospered in cooperation with the British. They began to build fire temples and develop a Western-style educational system. Back in Iran, the 1700s and 1800s were times of harsh persecutions. The Parsis of India continued to prosper, and they turned their attention to the plight of the Iranis and formed societies to help and aid them. Meanwhile, the Parsis were also open to reforms and influence from the West, as well as from the Hindu majority which surrounded them in India.